Hello and welcome to Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Hate Crime webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Before we start, we're just going to set a few admin guidance for yourselves. The first one would be please can you turn your mics off? Keep your cameras on and according to your bandwidth, or you may choose just to listen to the session. Please use the chat box for your questions, and we'll be recording this live event. So welcome to the webinar. My name is Imran Dean. I'm the Engagement Officer for Fire and Rescue and the lead for Equality and Diversity and Inclusion. My pronouns are he and him. Today's webinar is dedicated to hate crime and the effects it has on the LGBT community. This is the last of the 3 webinars which took place earlier this week. If you've missed them, you can see them again, and they were on positive action and inclusion, trans awareness to trans acceptance. These will be loaded on the Warwickshire Pride platform, ready for the Warwickshire Virtual Pride event tomorrow. They have generated a lot of interest and conversation and worth a watch. The webinars are being supported by neighbouring fire and rescue services, Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Royal Berkshire, who have all made a valuable contribution in making these possible. Thank you to all the chiefs who are committed and champions of equality and diversity and inclusion and remain strong allies for LGBTQ. I have been nominated as your host to facilitate this webinar on behalf of Kieran Amos, the Chief Fire Officer for Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, who can't be here today, but has kindly recorded this message of support.
And I'm the Chief Fire Officer at Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service. And I'd like to thank you all very much for taking part in today's webinar. I'm so sorry I can't be there personally. I would really love to be, but I'm afraid I'm away on a family holiday that's been booked for quite some time. But I really do want to be there with you. I'm incredibly passionate about the subject of addressing hate crime in all its forms, but also promoting the wider EDI agenda. I'm also here to represent several other Chief Fire Officers and their respective services that share this passion and endeavour with me. So we've got an already established good relationship with our 3 Shires partnership of Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire. So that's Wayne Bocock and Rob McDougall, respectively, as their Chief Fire Officers. And that's now expanded to include also Royal Berkshire and Buckinghamshire. So Trevor Ferguson and Jason Failwell, the Chief Fire Officers of Royal Berkshire and Buckinghamshire too. And all of us share with a resolve and determination the need to make a positive difference around the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda, which very much includes our LGBT+ community, the virtual Pride event and the subject of this seminar, hate crime. I feel it's so important that we talk openly and honestly about hate crime, possibly more importantly for many of us, that we truly listen and learn from genuine lived experiences and issues, the right here, right now issues, not history or hypotheticals. I feel strongly that the more we talk about such things with inquiring and open minds, the more we will understand, but also hopefully the more we can start to break down some of those awful stigmas that are also associated with hate crime and also invariably many other hidden crimes, which I think much of hate crime is hidden. I feel we must work together to make our organisations, our communities and indeed our society safer for the LGBT community and for all. By standing together, I feel sure we can stamp out hate crime and perhaps more importantly, we can create greater inclusion and understanding in our world. I'd like to recognise too the amazing work that's being done by so many on this subject, and I fully support and endorse the excellent work of the various hate crime partnerships made up of local organisations that have a responsibility for crime safety, but far more the fact that these organisations are also driven by excellent people who want to make a positive difference and contribution around this agenda. So such partnerships include representatives from a number of statutory, voluntary and community organisations, including our excellent and respective police forces. We've recognised that hate crime is underreported, and I think part of that is because much of it is hidden, and that improvements are definitely needed to increase trust and confidence in the reporting and prosecution process, and broaden the support on offer to our victims. I hope, and indeed I'm absolutely sure, there will be rich discussion taking place in the webinar this evening, and I feel equally sure that we will support the ongoing conversation on hate to improve and shape our organisations, as I've already said, and it's definitely an intent for us all. I look forward to hearing about the event on my return, and particularly about those learning outcomes and hopefully some next steps for us all, so we can actually make some tangible changes, some tangible lasting changes around this. So once again, I would like to wish you a very safe and hopefully happy and productive Pride. Take care all, enjoy the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kieran. And Kieran's raised some really interesting points about around trust and confidence. And it's something that around hate crime we really need to think about as a service, as an organisation, as individuals as well, and how we can instill this trust and confidence in hate crime and reporting hate crime and the process that is involved in it. So moving on, what constitutes hate crime? Our invited speakers today will be opening the debate and sharing their understanding from a service point, a community perspective, and the available support, whilst referring to examples of case studies and lived experience. For many of us, experiencing hate crime cannot be easily forgotten. It happens and we question ourselves, why did it happen to me? The emotional and devastation impact it has on our mental health and well-being. Hate crime comes in many forms, and each case of hate crime has a human story. A real person who is just trying to be themselves, living their life without feeling persecuted in what they believe is their human right and freedoms, and choose who they wish to love. Myself have experienced 4 separate incidents of hate crime. I am from a BAME background. I am Muslim and gay. All my incidents of hate crime experience have related to my sexuality. I still recall the experiences as they were yesterday and will always remain with me forever. My only regret is that I only was confident to report 2 out of the 4. I will share my experiences throughout this discussion. During this webinar, we will be taking questions, so if you do have any questions you wish to ask our panels, please use the chat box. I'm sure we will try our very best to answer all the questions allowed in the time that we have this evening. Let's welcome our guest speakers who have offered their Friday evening to join this webinar. So first we have Alex Gloucester from Warwickshire County Council Hate Crime Partnership, Ben Smith, Warwickshire Police Chief Superintendent, Dan Brown, Chair of Warwickshire Pride, Junaid Hussain, CEO of Equip, Equality Inclusion Partnership, and Ben Donnay, who's the Children and Young People's Team Manager from Victim Support. Speakers, can I please ask you that from this webinar today, that you take one learning point that is for your organisation, and in the closing summary this evening, I will come back to you and ask you what that action point might be for your service area. So if we move on to our first speaker then, Alex Gloucester from Warwickshire County Council will give us an introduction to hate crime in Warwickshire and a general overview in the United Kingdom. Alex.
Thanks, Imran. So yeah, I am Alex Gloucester. I'm a Community Safety Project Manager within Warwickshire County Council. Thanks for having me this evening. Part of my role is about coordinating Warwickshire's Hate Crime Partnership, several of the members from which you've just heard listed and you'll hear from later on this evening. And I'll mention a few towards the end as well, just to give our thanks to them as well for all the work that we do as a partnership. Just so we're all on the same page in terms of what a hate crime is. Hate crime really is any criminal offence that's committed where there's a perception by the victim, a witness or anyone else that that crime has been motivated by hostility or prejudice towards somebody because of their actual or perceived race, religion or belief, disability, sexual orientation or their gender identity. I'm going to give a blend of national and local statistics, just to set the scene a little bit more, because I'm conscious that while a lot of the partners you'll hear from this evening are Warwickshire based, we do have that broader cohort of community members from all around the UK. Within Warwickshire, hate crime levels have remained relatively steady or steadily increasing over the past few years. Now, while this is of some concern for our communities living their day-to-day lives, we also recognise that hate crime is one of those crime types where we don't necessarily see the decrease in reporting as a good thing, because we understand that a lot of it goes unreported. As Imran's already highlighted tonight, out of the 4 incidents he experienced, 2 of them were reported and 2 of them weren't. Nationally, there's been research that suggests that around 3 in 5 hate crimes actually go unreported in the country. Why that 3 in 5? There'll be many different reasons for that between each individual person. I'm sure we'll hear from a lot of why that is tonight. From what we hear from our communities, sometimes it can be simply not knowing what hate crime is. If somebody's walking down the street and somebody winds down their window when they're driving the car, shouts abuse, 2 people recognise that that is actually possibly a hate offence, that is a hate offence and possibly a hate crime, and that can be reported. Likewise, if that happens to somebody every day, are they necessarily going to feel a need or feel a want to report that every single time that it does happen to them as well? So there's a lot of work that we as a partnership have to do to tackle a lot of the barriers that are in place for people reporting. Warwickshire hate crime reports in terms of recent months, so since April to July of this year, hate crime reports have gone up around a quarter compared to the stats last year. A lot of that could be linked to things like COVID. With the lockdown measures easing, there's a lot of pressure on people socially in terms of social distancing, reintegration into pubs and social arenas and retail as well. And we've seen a lot of reports coming through locally from those kinds of premises. We've also recently, in the wider scheme of hate crime, not necessarily just LGBT+ that we'll be focusing on tonight, but recently we've also had the Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations all over the country, and whether or not there's an impact on that as well is something that we've noticed too, with race offences increasing. Generally within Warwickshire, hate crime against the LGBT+ community accounts for around 15% of the offences that are reported to police. The overwhelming majority are race related, which is 70%, and 8% are for disability and 5% religion. The mathematicians in the room will know that there's about 2% left over from that maths, and that is covered by Brexit related offences, which Warwickshire Police have in recent years started flagging. So if Brexit is mentioned during a hate offence, then it will be flagged as such on the systems. Nationally, hate crime is on the rise. It increased 10% between 2017-18 and 18-19, and the largest increases were in fact with sexual orientation, which increased 25%, and transgender hate, which increased 37%. So we're seeing a massive rise in the number of LGBT+ individuals coming forward and having the confidence to report it to their local police forces, which is always a positive thing. Across Warwickshire, we're bringing partnership data together more. You'll hear from a lot of organisations tonight who receive reports and offer support to victims of hate. We're bringing that information together more so we can be more responsive to the trends that we're seeing across the county. And also, if we're seeing any decreases in reporting as well, we can do more targeted awareness raising with our communities. You'll hear from several partnership members this evening, as I've already mentioned, on the work that they do within the partnership. Just to say, we also have the likes of the NHS, education services, the district and borough councils within Warwickshire, and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And collectively, we are delighted to be here this evening to support Warwickshire Pride and hear from our communities first and foremost about how we as a partnership can continue to best support them in the fight against hate. I'll leave it there and I'll pass back to Imran because I've probably gone over my time already, but thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that introduction. I think it just shows where we are with hate crime across Warwickshire. There's so much to do, so much that we have to do to make sure that people are reporting hate crime and we have better outcomes. I understand that the Ben Smith, Chief Superintendent of Local Policing, can't be with us due to technical reasons, but we do have a video that we'd like to show based on the police. I think if we can come to Ben. Should we go to Dan Brown? Dan, can you give us an overview from a community perspective? What's happening with LGBTQ and hate crime?
Yeah, there we go, and I'm unmuted. So hi everyone, I'm Dan. I'm the Chair of Trustees at Warwickshire Pride. So I'll tell you a bit about the work we do, how we support victims of hate crime, and then talk about some of my own experiences and that of the charity as well. So Warwickshire Pride is much more than, you know, an annual absolutely fabulous festival. We do lots of stuff throughout the year as well to support LGBT+ people across the county. So we run a range of support services and social activities. Currently we have LGBT+ youth groups in Leamington and Stratford, and soon to be in Rugby and North Warwickshire. We have a trans social group that meets twice a month, a group for people with learning disabilities, and we do telephone, email support, training, all sorts of stuff throughout the year. But a big part of our work is supporting victims of hate crime. And many people who access Warwickshire Pride services have experienced hate crime or hate incident because of their sexuality or their gender identity. And sadly, many of those victims are still experiencing the impact of the hate crime they experienced, which sadly is often compounded by the poor experience they might have when reporting it. Now, in our experience, which is backed up by lots of research, most victims don't report hate crime when they experience it. So some of our role is based around encouraging and supporting victims to report it, or making the report on their behalf. And that's mostly done through the reporthatenow.com website, which is a dedicated website for hate crime in Warwickshire. So in terms of my own experiences of hate crime and incidents, there's been a lot. We could probably do a 90-minute webinar just on that, but I'll try and keep it brief. And I'll apologise in advance also for any bad language that I use while I'm talking. But I want to keep it as real as possible and not shy away from the things that are really happening to people. So I've been called a faggot, a queer, a puff, and other similar meanings on many occasions. I've been barred from a pub in Leamington. The manager said that I was a fucking disgusting queer, and that was the reason given for being barred. I've been punched, I've been beaten up for being gay, I've had holy water thrown in my face by a work colleague and told I was being cleansed of being gay, and you know, lots of other things that have happened over the years. Now at Warwickshire Pride we've received a lot of hate as well. So for example, there's someone that's targeted us online for, I don't know, the last 6 or 7 years via our Facebook page. And last year, just before the festival, we received more hate than we've ever experienced in the last almost 10 years running as an organisation. And that included someone saying that gay people should be killed. So 2 years ago, we had a stall at a market in Stratford. And some of you may have heard about this, but it was targeted by over 100 homophobic people in about a 3-hour period, and eventually we had to pack up and go home because we just couldn't take it anymore. And last year we had a stall in Leamington in the local shopping centre that was vandalised, and we had banners and posters around the town stolen or defaced. So hate crime is definitely rising, I think, you know, based on the work that we do with the local LGBT+ community, and also based on our own experiences as individuals and as a charity as well. So I think hate crime is worse than anyone actually really realises, and I think we're in a period of time where we're starting to go backwards rather than forwards. So while I'm chattering on, I do want to talk a bit about experiences with the police, and I'm going to try not to be too critical here. And I know that the term critical friend has often been used when describing me, and I know I'm guilty of being more critical than a friend at times, but it's important that these things are discussed. And you know, it's true to say that the overall experience of reporting hate to Warwickshire Police has been poor in general. And the community often feedback that, you know, they weren't taken seriously, the officers seemed unwilling to take action, and that wasn't a positive outcome. Now, as a charity, as Warwickshire Pride, our experience had actually been okay until about this time last year. And it was after that period of getting a lot of hate online and banners being defaced and all that kind of stuff. And me and a colleague went and reported it to the police, or at least tried to. And sadly, the officer who took the report didn't really take it that seriously and kind of made us feel like we're being an inconvenience. And actually part of the hate, report, he refused to take it. So we then worked with Equip, and I know you'll hear from Janae from Equip in a bit. They do fantastic work, supporting victims of hate, and we put in a complaint and escalated it through them, but sadly the outcome of that was the police sided with the officer. So those negative experiences make it difficult for us as a charity to encourage LGBT+ people to report hate, because the chances are it could well be a waste of their time. But despite this, we do remain committed to working with Warwickshire Police, being a critical friend and helping them to do and to be better. So it's not all negative though, and I do want to end on a positive. I recently had a call with the new lead for hate crime at Warwickshire Police, and their new hate crime team is getting started, and I'm actually feeling quite confident that we'll finally see things getting a bit better and progress being made. And at Warwickshire Pride, we really look forward to seeing that progress and being part of helping Warwickshire Police to improve. But although there's now a dedicated hate crime team and officers in place, it's really important that there is a shift in culture from the top right down to the bottom. And it's important for those officers on the beat and those taking hate crime reports to have a deeper understanding of hate crime, how it impacts victims, and the barriers that exist for LGBT+ people. So something else I want to address finally before I be quiet is we've had growing calls over the last couple of years, and last year in particular, to ban the police from Warwickshire Pride, and I just want to address that. I just want to be candid, first of all, and say that yes, there have been times when actually I've considered it, but ultimately I don't think it's the answer. I think banning the police would be too easy, and it would just create more problems than it solves. And part of achieving progress is about engaging with people and with organisations that we don't necessarily agree with, but want to help improve or to reach some kind of common ground. So while we hear all of those who call on us to ban the police because they feel they don't deal with hate crime properly and because of a lot of historical stuff, we'd rather engage with the police and work with them to help them understand the issues and implement the necessary changes. Banning them would just shut down the discussion and just causes more conflict and division. So I'm really grateful for this webinar taking place and all the work that everyone's put in, particularly Imran. Thank you, and I'm loving your shirt tonight. While it's important to highlight the issues and what's happened historically, this is a really great opportunity actually to discuss progress and how we achieve that by working together. Thank you.
Thanks.
Imran, can you go on now, please, when you're ready?
It's still sitting at yellow.
Okay, it stopped.
That's it. All good, all good.
Okay.
Are we having some technical difficulties? Okay,
Unfortunately, we are.
all right. Okay, sorry about that. We are having technical difficulties with our webinar tonight, as you can imagine. But nevertheless, we will carry on and persist. Dan, you've raised some interesting points around the police, and I think for the police service, I think because of what they're doing their very best to support us. And what we need to do is actually advise them and guide them in terms of what is not working and what is working and how we can support the process. I think we do need the police as allies, as LGBT people, and we do need to recognise that they have got a task that is impossible to actually get a positive result for everybody. But I think we do need to have them on board and continue the conversations to make it work, so they can see it from an LGBTQ perspective when we are reporting the crime. This may be a training need in itself, but it's something that we need to work jointly in collaboration, and I'm sure with Alex's help that we can do this together. But thank you very much. So moving on to our next guest, Junaid Hussain, who is from Equip and is the Chief Executive Officer, will give us an insight of what Equip is and what they do. Junaid, can I pass it on to you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Imran. Right, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much to Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service, and in particular Imran and Sue for inviting myself and the Equality and Inclusion Partnership. Hello to the rest of the speakers, Alex, Elise, Dan and Ben. Hello to you all and everyone listening as well. So just in relation to the Equality and Inclusion Partnership, we are a charity organisation, more specifically a charitable incorporated organisation, and we've been established since 2016. Prior to that, we were known under a different guise. However, our history dates back to the 1960s. So in terms of working within the field of equalities, we do have a long history of doing that. Now, within the context of our work, I won't go through the detail of what our aims, objectives, and all the rest of it are. But however, you know, the context of our work is very much focused around promoting equality and diversity, tackling discrimination, tackling hate, promoting cohesion, and promoting inclusion as well. Our strapline, I will mention our strapline, which is promoting equality through partnership. And that's something that we really hold dear to the work that we do, because one of the things that we realise is that we certainly can't do this by ourselves. We have a very small team and we can't do this by ourselves. So we very much rely on working in partnership with other organisations, with other like-minded organisations and individuals, many of which are speakers on this call at the moment, and many others as well. Within the context of the work that we deliver and the support that we provide, it does cover all of the 9 protected characteristics as defined by the equalities legislation. Alex mentioned them at the beginning, so again I won't run through through that particular list. However, you know, I can really categorize the work that Equip does within 4 key areas of business. So there's the promoting equality through learning. So we do that through different awareness sessions, through different kind of workshop sessions and all the rest of it. And again, there's a different portfolio of training and awareness that we do provide, which again can be found on our website. Providing information and research, again we do that again through different targeted projects and initiatives. And then as well, what we try and do is try and get out as much equalities focused information as we possibly can, whether that's through our bulletin on our website, through social media, on our Facebook page, on our Twitter feed as well. Engaging with communities and really understanding what the equalities issues are. Again, this is a key part of the work that we do in terms of really exploring what the key issues are here for Warwickshire, and then understanding how we then go about working with other partners in terms of resolving those particular issues. And then lastly, our discrimination and hate casework service as well, which we provide. Now, within the context of our organisation, again, as I mentioned, we do work very closely with other partners. Again, as we've mentioned here, victim support and Warwickshire Pride, Warwickshire Police, Warwickshire Fire Rescue Service, Warwickshire County Council, etc. However, we are very independent as an organisation as well. So just going back to Dan's comment about, well, actually acting as a critical friend and continuing to work with partners such as the police. Again, you know, we do have a relationship with them, and yes, it's not always rosy and it's not always a bed of roses. However, I think it's really about having that understanding where issues are flagged and looking at how we can address them collectively as well. I'll probably come back onto that issue of perhaps Warwickshire Police and kind of a working relationship moving forward. Just to give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the projects that we've been involved with over the past, say for example, for the past year. Several projects within the context of harmful practices, looking at looking at domestic violence, child sexual exploitation, forced marriages, on-the-based violence, looking at issues surrounding mental health and stigmas and the taboos attached to mental health within different community groups as well, looking at some black magic and how cultures perceive kind of issues surrounding black magic or spiritual possession, and potential practices within some cultures as well. There's a hate crime charter that we worked with a range of partners in developing and rolling out to private organisations, so restaurants, takeaways, pubs, transport companies, so on and so forth. This was again supported by Philip II Police and Crime Commissioners team. So again, we're continuing with that initiative as well. There's other work that we're involved with. There's a European project that we're involved with at the moment, actually, a youth peer-to-peer support, a civil rights project that we're currently working on, and quite a few of our initiatives are health focused as well. As I mentioned, again, I've just given you a snapshot of some of the projects that we've been involved with. However, you can find out more information on our website, which is equipequality.org.uk. Just going back to answering the question in terms of what we do in terms of supporting victims, witnesses, anyone that has experienced discrimination or hate. We do offer a discrimination and hate casework service, which is free and impartial. This is an AQS accredited service. And we do have a dedicated discrimination and hate crime caseworker as well that works specifically on the cases as they come through. So anyone experiencing discrimination or hate, whether within the context of education, the criminal justice system, or going through the criminal justice system, accessing health services in their employment, accessing goods and services and housing as well. With regards to hate, again, quite a lot of our cases that do come through are from issues that happen on the street, in the local supermarkets, in the local shops, etc., at events, or online as well. So again, yeah, so with that particular casework service, we will take them through the support in terms of identifying a form of resolution for that. Now, as part of that particular service, we may possibly refer on to other organisations for other aspects of support. So say, for example, if there are issues concerning mental health, or that individual has been impacted concerning their health and well-being, we would then look to identify other partners that can add that additional support. In terms of hate crimes specifically, during the course of the last financial year, we did see a huge rise in the number of reports that were coming through compared to the previous financial year. And I think this was largely due to perhaps further awareness of hate crime and ways in which to report as well. However, I do take on board the points made by other speakers that underreporting is still a key issue within the community. And I think also as well, that underreporting can be as a result of a number of issues. Firstly, the individual that has been subjected to hate may not be aware that they have been subjected to a hate crime or what is defined as a hate incident. Also as well, as we mentioned, in terms of confidence, individuals not having that confidence to report. And again, Imran, you mentioned in terms of your personal experience, with the two incidents that happened to you, not having that confidence. And again, that's something that we're trying to build within the community, within the LGBT plus community, about having that confidence to report as well. I think also as well, a lot of individuals that are subjected to hate, perhaps kind of consider what they're experiencing as part and parcel of their everyday life, or perhaps think that nothing can be done about it. I think, just going back to the issue about, well, actually, why bother reporting? I think that's a key thing that we need to really address, because again, in some situations, in some circumstances, it may not be possible to resolve that particular issue. However, I think it is really important that agencies that are responsible for dealing with hate crime, like the police, Kent Council, ourselves in terms of speakers, that we're aware of the lay of the land in terms of hate. Because if we're only going by what's actually reported, then I think there will be that perception of, well, actually, this is what the evidence base is, and then in terms of various interventions or perhaps preventative issues being addressed to those particular areas. However, if a large proportion is being underreported, then we'll never know as organisations. I think Alex did mention the hate crime partnership that we're part of, as well as other partners such as the Police and Crime Commissioner and his office, the Warwickshire Police, Warwickshire County Council, Victim Support, the Nuneaton Bedworth Borough Council, Rugby Borough Council, and ourselves. And again, there is a targeted action plan that we're all collectively working towards in terms of getting out there and trying to raise awareness within the community, but then also as well kind of target specific initiatives and projects which seek to build that confidence across the community as well. Now, Dan mentioned the reporthatenow.com website, which again is very separate to the police or to any other body. And what we do is we very much encourage individuals to report through this particular mechanism if they have the ability to do so online. Again, there's a lot of information on the reporthatenow.com website, and individuals are able to report anonymously on that website as well. There's also the option of asking for further intervention or further actions to be taken, or simply just letting us know, well, actually, this is what happened to me, and that's where I wanted to stop, basically. So again, please, if anybody does have the time to go on to reporthatenow.com, there's a whole raft of information surrounding hate and hate crime awareness on that. There's also an e-learning tool on there as well. So again, if anybody's wanting to increase their awareness about exactly what's defined as a hate crime or a hate incident, that e-learning training will give them that information. I think it's also worth recognizing that within the context of different partners and different organizations, there is that distinct definition in terms of what a hate crime is and what a hate incident is. However, for an individual that has been subjected to hate, it doesn't really matter, because the impact of being subjected to a hate incident could perhaps for that individual be greater than it actually being classed as a crime. So I think from our perspective, you know, hate is hate at the end of the day. You know, being targeted towards the LGBT plus community, it's hate at the end of the day. That's essentially what we're talking about. Again, in terms of further information regarding ourselves, we do have a weekly bulletin that I mentioned. So if anybody wants any further information that we're putting out, and what we try and do is we try and put out as much information, but, you know, within the broader context of equalities. However, you know, any initiatives that some of our other partners are perhaps pursuing, or some of the initiatives that we're rolling out with, then you can find that on our bulletin. But if anybody has the chance to have a look at our website, www.equipequality.org.uk, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Junaid. That's brilliant. There's so much work that you are doing, and I wish I had your services when I was going through my hate crime experience. But as you can see, that Equip are doing so much good work, and they are trying to support all LGBTQ issues. And if you do need any further assistance, please go on their website and have a look at that. Now, moving on, we're going to move on to Ben Donay, who is the Children and Young People's Manager at Victim Support. Ben?
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm the Children's Service Manager from Victim Support, and we're the leading national charity for victims and witnesses of crime and trauma. So whilst we're part of a national charity, we're a really local specialist team consisting of independent victim advocates and initial response officers. And our service supports people from the ages of 5 up who are affected by all different types of crime and trauma. We've got a specialist team of children's practitioners and then a specialist team of adults practitioners. And we cover the whole of the county of Warwickshire and have a physical presence in Bedworth and also in Leamington. And our role really is to help people cope and recover from the harm caused. And a large part of our work is supporting people from all communities experiencing hate crime, and especially from the LGBTQ plus community. And our role really is to give them a chance to talk about what's happened if they want to, and if they want to talk through that, but most importantly, the impact that has had and how they're feeling from that, and then look at what we can do to help. So that could be some safety planning if there's physical risks and concerns. It could be looking at some confidence and self-esteem building, whether they're struggling to sleep or eat, and some coping strategies around different emotions. It could be looking at some housing support or the practical elements of advocacy with other agencies. Or personal safety equipment, so we can provide things like window alarms, door alarms, personal alarms, and all of our support is free and confidential, and it's led by our service users. So people who come to us for support, we listen to their personal needs and individual needs and their experiences, and look at what we can do to help them cope and recover from what's happened. Now, in terms of how people access our service, if they have chosen to report the incident to the police, we get their information automatically. So it's transferred over to our service, and we have a team of initial response officers who make contact to really introduce ourselves, introduce our service, and see if there's anything we can do to help. But also people can refer in a whole host of different ways. So we are totally independent from the police, and whilst we get referrals from them, we get self-referrals from people who have experienced hate crime, as well as people referring from other agencies. So anyone who has experienced any form of crime and trauma, but also hate crime, and people from the LGBTQ plus community can contact us by telephone in our local offices. We've got a website that they can do a web referral, and we also have things like live chat, so a bit like instant messenger, where they can speak direct to somebody 24 hours a day about their immediate emotional needs and the impact it's had, but then be passed into our local team for the next morning for us to provide that support that they might need. And that's the bulk of our work in terms of that one-to-one direct support around the impact of crime and trauma. But we also do a lot of partnership work in awareness raising and different initiatives that are taking place. And our CYP team specifically do a lot of schools work. So we feel it's really important to get into schools and to young people as early as possible to talk around hate crime, the impact it can have, and also where they can access support. So we're accredited in a number of different programs we deliver, as well as working with people like the NCS, so National Citizenship Service, around spreading that message of what is hate crime, the impact it has, and what support is available. I am conscious of time, Imran, so I have got a case study of somebody who we have supported, who's happy for me to share what happened, the impact it had, and what we did. It's just a question of, have we got time now, or do you want me to save that for later? Go now. So this is the incident, or the story of a lady that we're going to call Jennifer. So we have changed her name and some of the details within this to make sure she's not identifiable because of the nature of our support. But Jennifer came to us when she was in her 20s, and she'd recently moved out of her family home to live in a flat on her own for the first time, to live independently. So Jennifer is a lesbian, and she's been with her partner for a couple of years by the time she came to us for support. And at first she was getting on really well with her neighbours in her new place, but once they found out she was a lesbian, everything changed. So when she would get home from work, some of the neighbours would be together in groups outside of her flat, and they'd whisper, they'd laugh, they'd point, and make her feel really conscious and uncomfortable of who she is and what they might be saying. And things really rapidly got worse for her. So she began to get letters and things posted through her door, which were really homophobic, making threats against her, her partner, her relatives when they came to visit. And because of this, as well as it having an impact on her emotional well-being and her physical safety, it had an impact on her relationship. So her girlfriend stopped coming over, and it really impacted all of her life. And one day Jennifer came home to find that a homophobic word had been sprayed across her front door. So it was for everybody to see, and had a real big impact. It was, for her at the time, she thought it was permanent. She couldn't get it to come off, and she'd had rubbish posted through her door and people telling her that there's no room for people like her, they'd phrase it as, to be in their community. And she really didn't know what to do, and at this point hadn't reported it to the police because she had a massive concern around it making things worse. So she self-referred into us after a friend of hers told her about our service, and our role really was to give her a chance to talk about what's been happening, the impact it's had, and look at what we can do to help. And part of that was simply having that chance to offload. So having somebody who's non-judgmental, and just giving her that chance to process things and talk through it. And we also help to discuss the pros and cons of reporting. So our role is never to say to somebody, you have to report this to the police. We're not there to say do's or don'ts, but we can discuss the pros and cons, and the benefits of reporting against the impact that might have. And from doing that for Jennifer, she actually decided she did want to report it, but didn't quite feel confident to do that. So one of our advocates, our adult practitioners, went with her to support her making that, so some moral support. And it was actually a really positive experience for Jennifer, and the police officer that she spoke to took it really seriously, took all of that information and kept in regular contact throughout that criminal justice process. We were also able to get somebody to come and professionally clean the spray paint from her door, because that was a daily reminder for her and for people walking past. And we also supported her to move house, so she felt that it was at the point where she didn't feel comfortable where she lived anymore. So our role was to look at other options and help her move forward. And it was a really positive outcome for Jennifer by the end. She was able to get into a new place and improve on her own health and well-being with the coping strategies that we'd put in place. So that's the story, or the background of one person that we've supported, and on a daily basis we're supporting people who experience hate crime, and spreading that message of our support as much as we can. I think that's it from me, Imran.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. You do so much in victim support, and we actually need to thank you for taking all these case studies and supporting people. And the case study that you have sort of shared with us, it just highlights that hate crime is present, it's happening today, and it happens in all walks of life. And it's something that we really need to work on, and in collaboration with our partners, we really need to look at it. In terms of the questions, the Q&A, we have got a question in place. The question reads, what is the point of reporting if the hate crime was committed by a stranger with no other witnesses or evidence? I know the Chief Superintendent of Local Policing, Ben Smith, has put a response on, which we can read. Reporting crime allows us to build a picture of offending accessing patterns and understanding of specific geographics issues. If the report isn't made, we cannot link the offences together and make the proper assessments of the crime and risks. It can also help the victims access other support services. Now that is very important, that we actually report all offences. I know sometimes when you are gay and you are coming out, and you may not be out, and it is a problem. You don't want to actually out yourself into a service where you're not outed at home. This can be a real problem, and I think it was for me when I was sort of thinking about reporting a hate crime that happened to me. I was thinking, being Muslim and gay, my family don't know. Now, do I take the steps in actually reporting my hate crime? What will that do for me? Now, if I'm not out as an individual, how will that impact on me? Will that automatically make me out? Now, for a young person coming out, that is something that we really need to think about, and sort of stepping away and actually stepping into their shoes and thinking about, you know, what would the consequences be? I know there is an understanding from the police that we need to report every crime, every hate crime, but it's also about a trust and confidence issue for the individual person, whether they want to report that crime and what it makes them feel. But, you know, if you have got those cute question and answers, please put them forward. I was reading the Stonewall's LGBTQ in Britain, hate crime and discrimination. And I was really taken back by some of the lived experience of some of the people. Just reading a few out for you. I was assaulted by a man whilst I was holding hands with my lesbian partner. He grabbed me from behind and thrusted himself into me, then verbally attacked me. That was from a 21-year-old in Wales. Another one would be, I was punched by a stranger who harassed my girlfriend. That's Charlie, who was 29 in Southwest. I mean, there are so many cases like this that we can talk about, so many experiences that people have of a lived, you know, everyday experience that they have when they go to work, whether they're coming from work, whether they're going out to a nightclub, whether they're coming out of a nightclub. I mean, is this fair? Do we need to accept this? I really don't know. We shouldn't be accepting this. There's another one here. Someone described their intentions to slit my throat and kill me. They went on to say no court would evict me for killing the queer bait. Now, this is the type of things, an everyday thing that is happening to young people and also other people. You know, myself, you know, I'm thinking, you know, what happened to me? You know, having my tires slashed, living somewhere where I was haunted, my windows were put through. Even a family member, you know, that took to actually sending, you know, explicit messages to my mother about me, about myself. And that's a form of hate crime through social media. I mean, we have to live through these hate crimes and these experiences every day. Some of these we just take a deep breath and we know that this is happening, but we move forward. But it's not really acceptable, and we need something to change. And we need all our services that support us to help us to enable this change. We need our allies, we need our partners that work with us. Now, we need everybody to support us, because it is quite difficult when you are sort of experiencing hate crime, and it's coming from a place where you feel that you're doing everything right. It's really important that we do get this right. And it's really important that we give the trust and confidence to people to report their crimes. I mean, those are just a few examples that I've picked out. I mean, just looking at hate crime through Stonewall, I mean, it's telling me that in the East, 35%, it's increased by 35% for hate crime. In the West Midlands, it's by 22%. In East Midlands, it's 19%. In the southwest, it's by 18%, 19% in the southeast. East of England is 19%. I mean, the figures are not looking good. I mean, they are alarming, and we do need to actually look into these figures and look at what we're going to do about this. I mean, Dan, from a community perspective, what can we do? I mean, in terms of gay people, how do we protect ourselves? I mean, we are reporting the crimes. Is it the process that's letting us down?
Oh yeah, just to mute myself. You know, I mean, we've said many times this evening that underreporting is a huge issue, and I think we just need to keep encouraging people to report it as much as possible. You know, even if it is a stranger who's committing the hate crime, at least it's reported, it's been logged, and the authorities know where these things are happening and can help to build up a pattern. But, you know, aside from reporting, I think it's also important that we support each other as a community and look at other ways in which we can protect ourselves. So, for example, last autumn winter, we put on a free personal safety class for the community that taught techniques for de-escalating, you know, if situations where they may be being attacked or verbally abused, and how to physically protect themselves. So I think things like that are important as well, just to give the community a bit more confidence and reassurance about how they can protect themselves as well as report the hate crimes.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. That's really interesting. Again, looking at more statistics around hate crime. This one's by the police, who monitor strands of hate crime through the www.it.org.uk. Now, in looking at these sort of stats here, looking at sexual orientation in 2018-19, 14,491 cases have been reported, and the trans was 2,333. Now, these cases are absolutely going through the roofs now in terms of hate crime. And it's not just hate crime that we experience on the streets, it's also hate crime that we experience online, the online bullying that happens to a lot of young people, but also anybody really. That's something that is experienced quite a bit now, and it's a new area of bullying, harassment. People are taunted and baited online just for being for themselves, or just having a flag behind them, or just wearing a colourful shirt like I have tonight, and being victimized just because they're living their lives. Now, this is just not on. And in terms of this, what can we do as a community around this? Alex, what do you suggest in terms of the community, in terms of what you're seeing in Warwickshire? How can we make a difference? How can we, the information that you're getting in terms of hate crime, what does that tell you, and what can we do as a community?
I think specifically around the online element, it's really interesting because that is something that has really catapulted in the last few years. What I always recommend for people to do is to call it out and report it as and when they see it online. Make sure that the social media companies themselves are aware of what is on their platforms, because it's going to be much tougher for social media companies to put their hands up and say, oh, we can't do anything about it because it's out of our control, if they get deluged with all the reports that are highlighting the real issues that are going on their platforms. And that's why I personally will spend, if I'm on social media, half the time I'll end up reporting a tweet that I end up seeing, or a message that I see, and just encouraging people to report it, and just being an ally for everyone really, whether it's homophobic abuse, racist abuse, disabled abuse that's online. I think that's really the key thing. In terms of communities and supporting them to report more broadly, I think it's a partnership. We've got a job to do to continue to listen to our communities and really understand the barriers that they are facing. And let's be upfront and honest about how we can actually, as a partnership, tackle it. While we are seeing an increase in reporting, as a partnership, we do see that as being a positive, because we want to know that people have the confidence to report it, and hopefully we'll get to a point where it will stagnate, and then we can really do the work to look at how can we actually drive that number back down again and tackle the microaggressions, the nuances that might drive a lot of the hate forward. And I think with the Black Lives Matter movement recently, people have been looking at their own microaggressions, their own behaviours, and while initially they might say, well, I'm definitely not racist because X, Y, and Z, but they start to think about it more and more, and they realise that actually maybe some of the behaviours or some of the language that they use maybe doesn't necessarily agree or confirm the belief that the individual might have. And I think that's a bit of work to do in the long run, certainly around, as a society, collectively looking at what we can do to tackle our microaggressions that might drive hate forward in its many forms.
Thanks, Alex. In terms of microaggressions, Alex, what does that actually mean, and what is microaggressions?
It's mainly just sort of the smaller things that people don't even realise. It can be sort of prejudicial thoughts without even realising it. I've heard many more wiser experts than myself, sort of on the Black Lives Matter movement, when sort of that was predominantly in the news. They would talk about if somebody was unlocking their car or look at their car, maybe at night time, and a black person walked past, how much quicker are you to lock the car or to hide your keys away or to run into your house or into your office than you would do if it was a white person? So it's little behaviours that people often don't even notice are going on. Thoughts, speech, in jokes, not appreciating or hearing the phrase Black Lives Matter and instantly saying, oh, well, all lives matter, and not seriously understanding what's being discussed about here, and sort of diminishing or minimising open discussions around tackling hate. It's all sort of, many things can build up to be a microaggression that in turn can then build up to be more outward facing aggressions in many forms.
That's great. Thank you, Alex. I mean, we've got a question in, which is quite interesting. I've got my own views on this one. The great thing about anti-social media is that you can turn it off. Now, is that right, that we turn off and switch off and we close our ears to this? Or no, we should be tackling it? Now, I'd like to hear my panel about what they think about this. Shall we go to Dan first?
Yeah, so I have mixed views on this, really. And you know, I used to be of the view that every single comment needs to be challenged, and then I just found myself getting into all these arguments, and it's exhausting. I tend to screenshot comments now and report them, but you know, the block button is there for a reason, so use it. You know, just for your own peace of mind, for your own mental well-being more than anything, I think. But I'd say always get a screenshot, get some evidence of the comment, and then report it, but block them.
Brilliant. So from victim support, I mean, what would you suggest then? Do people just block it out? Do they just switch it off? Doesn't it mean that if you've switched it off, that microaggression moves on to somebody else?
That comes into it. I mean, for me, Dan made a really key point around screenshotting. So for all of our young people and adults, when they're experiencing abuse offline, one of the key parts is, if they feel able to, taking a screenshot of what's happened and then removing it or taking it off from their page or platform or whatever it is. But for me, the key thing here is, especially with online abuse, is that there is no escape from it. So yes, you can block, you can delete, but actually you've read it and it's had that impact already. And I do think in some ways there's a part to play in challenging that. But I also fully accept somebody who's experiencing abuse on a daily basis is not or may not be in a position to take that and to challenge it. And it's just about having those who have the power, so like the social media companies, organisations, charities, campaigning to make a difference about that, and just being conscious of how much pressure we're putting on people experiencing abuse to take action. So really for me, the key is to get that evidence for themselves if they did want to report, but really just speaking to somebody, whether it's a professional organisation, whether it's a family friend, a friend, anyone like that, having that person to talk to, because although you can remove it, as I said, you've read it and it's had that impact already.
Thank you. In terms of microaggressions, we probably face microaggressions at work without us knowing every day in our lives. They can come in all sorts of formats, and if we are savvy enough, then we can sort of know what people are sort of meaning and what they're saying. But in a modern workplace now about microaggressions, Alex, I mean, what do you think then? I mean, it does happen every day in our lives, but we just fail to not see it. And like Dan said, we actually have to choose our battles very carefully. Otherwise, we'd be in battles every day of our lives. So in terms of microaggressions, and it is a form of hate crime, really. What would we do then if there is something that is happening and we feel that our line manager is part of the problem and not solution? What can we do here?
What I would personally do in that given situation would be go to their line manager and escalate it that way, and let people know that you're not happy with whatever situation might be happening there. Relying on colleagues as well, because it often will be the case that if you're experiencing something, someone somewhere in the office might be privy to private conversations that might be taking place which might be more openly offensive, or might have just seen or witnessed things as well. And it's all, as we mentioned several times tonight, it's about being an ally for someone, being there for someone, being there, that friendly shoulder, to listen to somebody, to signpost them if they need to go to support, if they need to speak to HR about an issue as well. I definitely recommend going to HR as well. Doing whatever you think is right in that situation to protect yourself and sort of protect yourself from any further harm or any further distress that you might be under, as Ben's already mentioned. It's, once something's said, it's all in a good reporter, but you have still got that the effects of it, which is why seeking out support services is so important. And as much as we can do for everyone, just because we don't experience something doesn't mean that we don't have a role in calling it out.
That's great. Thank you. That's well put, really. So, I mean, hate crime, so it can take so many forms. We can have so many, so many people have so many experience around hate crime in everyday life, and sometimes they don't even know what they're experiencing. And it has such an effect on their mental health and well-being. And it's something that once it happens to you, you will relive that throughout your relive that throughout your week, that it's happened to you, and you question yourself, why did it happen to me? What did I do wrong? I'm just an ordinary person living a life, you know, I'm doing my own work, I'm minding my own business, but somebody doesn't like me in some sort of respect. And it's something that is constantly playing on people's minds, and mental health is a massive part of this experience. So, I mean, Dan, in terms of mental health now, I mean, how do we look at this, and how can people actually support themselves in terms of not actually revisiting the same experience? I know it never goes out, and my own experiences, you know, they've been there, and they've always haunted me. And even if I speak about them today, they're still present, and it's like it just happened yesterday. And it was like, oh my God, you know, it's there again, or people are going to take the mickey out of me. They're going to use bad language, offensive language. They're going to point me out or single me out. And it just constantly plays on your mind as an individual. And I think as you grow older, I think it starts to get easier because you become more confident in yourself. And you just think, right, I can handle this. But sometimes it just is there in the background. It's niggling at you all the time, that you just can't shift it away because it's there like a bad smell. So what can we do, I mean, in terms of our own mental health? How can we help ourselves?
I think the most important thing is to seek help if you feel you need it, and to talk to someone, you know, whether you access a service such as victim support, or whether you go to a service like Equip and get help from them, or whether you come and access one of our services at Warwickshire Pride, either from our, you know, kind of more formal support groups, or at just one of our coffee mornings. You know, talking to people when you need to will definitely help. And I think it's important to remember that talking and sharing is not a sign of weakness. It's a strength to recognise that in yourself, and to get help if you need it. So I think that's the most important thing, really.
Thanks for that. I mean, in terms of sort of training and actually getting upskilled for our organisations, I mean, what is out there, and how can our organisation sort of tap into the training that are maybe our police officers need, that maybe they don't understand LGBTQ community or about how they're feeling, so there may be a training issue there. Maybe the fire and rescue service needs some training around training our firefighters to understand the rights of LGBTQ community. Now, what is available out there? Because I'm really unsure what is out there. Alex, what training do you provide from the county council?
Well, collectively as a partnership, we are putting together our training offer in terms of what that's going to look like, especially in this new world of doing things via Microsoft Teams and other online platforms. We're looking at what that will physically be. But one of the main things really is that once we do have that offer in place, it's about getting it as widespread as possible. So we often think about, we'll talk to Warwickshire Pride, we'll talk to various community groups within our county, but it's a training really for everyone and about making a difference for everyone. So that no matter who somebody goes to report stuff through, or if they hear stuff in their everyday lives, you're getting sort of the same response back in terms of making sure they know who the right support services are, where the reporting functions are. I know that Dan does training specifically around LGBT awareness and trans awareness as well, which covers around hate crime and reporting it and what hate crime is. I know Equip also do their own distinct training offer too to professionals. It's basically my job really is to make sure that that's all on the same page, which I know that a lot of it is, having attended a lot of the training in the past, and really just make sure that it's relevant to 2022. So hopefully from next month we'll be able to put out a formal training offer and engagement offer for our communities to engage with much more. But a lot of it focuses on what hate crime is, how you can report it, and as well the myth busting too. A lot of people have misconceptions for one reason or another, through no fault of their own, around what hate crime is, or if they can report it, what level it has to get to be reported to the police. And there's a lot of work that we need to do as a partnership to make sure that our communities are confident that they understand what hate is and where they can report it.
Thank you. Thank you. Junaid, in terms of Equip, the training that you offer, what is that training and how do we access that training?
Sure. I think in terms of the training that we offer, we offer a range of different training kind of themes, etc. And again, all of those different themes can be found on our website. In terms of accessing it, it can be found on our website. I think the key thing that I just want to mention here is about the style of training and the delivery of training as well. I mean, what we try and encourage is having either a face-to-face, or obviously, given the current situation, having a training platform which is online through this, where you get to speak to a particular trainer and have those kind of conversations. Because I think with some organizations that perhaps heavily rely on online training, where you just click through a number of slides, etc., and then at the end of it you're proficient in that particular theme. Again, I really encourage against that, and really would encourage that kind of interaction and that kind of conversation. And I think only through these types of conversations within teams and within organisations are you really able to get to the heart of the issues and really understanding what aspects of change need to happen. Again, different organisations will have different training needs, but then also as well in terms of the things that they need to perhaps consider, change, adapt, or perhaps even highlight and celebrate. These will all be different within the context of different organisations.
Thank you. Dan, in terms of the training that you provide for the community, what does that look like and what does that entail then?
So we have LGBT plus awareness training and also trans awareness training. So they come in different forms. So we have, we can do full day, we can do half day, or we can do 1 hour bite-sized session, depending on the needs and the capacity of the organisation we're delivering to. But that's open to, all sectors, the voluntary sector, the public sector, private sector, and we've trained many organisations over the last few years, and always looking to do more. So it covers hate crime, it covers mental health issues, how to make services more inclusive and accessible, and how to be an ally to LGBT+ people as well. And it uses a lot of real life examples, and is heavily based on discussion rather than, you know, death by PowerPoint or something like that. So in terms of booking it, you can just go on our website, Warwickshire Pride, and, you know, find all the information on there. But we're always looking to train more people, more organisations, and also collaborate more with partners.
That's great. You've touched on allies, and that's a really important part of this hate crime seminar, and we haven't really had much time to talk about that. But when we talk about allies, what are allies, Dan? And who can become an ally, and what do they mean actually for the LGBT community? We always put that, you know, I'm an ally, he can be an ally, they are allies, but we really don't know, and some people don't know what allies are. What is their specific role in becoming an ally, and who can be an ally?
So an ally is essentially a friend of the LGBT+ community, somebody who supports and champions that community, but more than likely probably isn't LGBT+ themselves. So, you know, an ally may help you to report hate. They may help you in the workplace to feel more comfortable with who you are, with being out at work, with challenging, difficult situations. And, you know, just somebody that supports LGBT rights in general and is vocal and visible.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So just concluding with what we've been talking about today, I mean, hate crime is a massive agenda. I mean, it has so many strands that you can pull and look into. And there is no one solution to actually making it work. I think there is a partnership, a collaboration approach in actually making, you know, hate crime and the reporting of it and the process that is involved is actually instilling the trust and confidence in the person that's reporting that hate crime. I think we will all agree that hate crime is a difficult area based on the personal experience that that individual has and the outcome of that individual experience, you know, what it may be and what it may offer. And I think all services tonight have showed that, you know, they are willing to support, they are willing to hear, they're willing to communicate with anybody who is experiencing hate crime of any form, and the support is really out there. So just sort of looking at what support is available. Alex, will you go through what support is available for us in Warwickshire or wider?
Yes, I will, hopefully.
Thank you.
Shared. So hopefully people can see that. I won't even try to put it into full PowerPoint mode just in case it doesn't let me do it. But for support and further information, some of which we've already discussed this evening, but for Warwickshire Pride, Dan's already outlined their training around LGBT+ awareness and trans awareness training, each of those covering hate crime, what it is and how you report it. That is for any organisation across all sectors, and also mentions the one-to-one support, which is so important for victims of hate crime, whether that's on the phone or through email at the time being. They're also providing support at various groups. They've got a youth group, trans group, a learning disabilities group, coffee mornings. The list is probably endless with all the direct support that Pride are giving. The training is a cost attached, but the direct support is free. And visit the warwickshirepride.co.uk website if you want more information on that. Victim support, for any of our attendees who aren't from the Warwickshire area, the number that is on this page is the National Victim Support number, so you can contact the Victim Support helpline no matter where you are in the country. And victim support can provide emotional and practical help to those who've been affected by any crime, including hate crime within Warwickshire. For Warwickshire residents, there's also an email address there as well. If you want to, instead of ringing the phone, you can email them. Equip, their aim is to eliminate discrimination in all its forms across Warwickshire. You can call the team on that number there. That is a local number for Warwickshire, and an email address there for the team as well. I'm happy for these slides to be shared out to all the attendees, so you can, if people are jotting down or trying to write it in the phone, the numbers and email addresses, I'm sure that we'll be able to get this out to you. Warwickshire Police, report any hate that you do witness or experience to the police on the non-emergency 101 number. If it is an emergency, please do not hesitate to call 999. That is what it is there for. If a crime is taking place there and then, or you think that there is a risk to life in particular. We've mentioned it earlier on, but the Report Tech Now website is the one-stop shop for Warwickshire residents and professionals, but it's not limited necessarily to Warwickshire in terms of accessing it. It's sort of applicable to anyone and everyone really. There's a lot of national information on there too. Links to support services, whether it is local to Warwickshire or national. We also have the Report It page on there where you can report non-emergency hate incidents to the partnership, which gets fed through to Equip, and that is reporthatenow.com. If you're on social media, all of our work as a partnership uses the hashtag WalksHC, so check that out on Twitter as well, and engage with those tweets that we've put out there to encourage communities to report it. And we've mentioned training briefly, but if you are interested in any training or other engagements with Warwickshire's Hate Crime Partnership, please use that email address, communitysafety@warwickshire.gov.uk, and we'll happily take any inquiries there. Cool.
Thanks, Alex. That's really great to see so much support out there for LGBT hate crime. Just going back to our panel, I mean, I'm just conscious of time now. One action you will take away from this webinar tonight. So I will go to Alex first. So what are you going to take away from this webinar tonight, Alex?
So the one thing for myself is really to engage, help the partnership to engage more with our communities and listen to them, because we are all in this together to fight against hate crime. Whether it's events like this or similar that we'll do in the future, hopefully with our communities, it's just continuing to engage, listen first and foremost, and then work with our communities to deliver projects then that are going to really make a difference from the ground up, really.
Thank you, Alex. Dan from Warwickshire Pride, what are you going to do for us? What action point are you going to take forward?
Okay, so I've got 3 points here. So first of all, to continue, I know I can't do one, continue building stronger ties with Warwickshire Police, push for consistency in the service that LGBT+ people receive, and the positive actions that the police take. So secondly, support and continue to empower LGBT+ people in Warwickshire to report hate crime, whether that's to the police or through the Report Hate Now website. And finally, we've decided that we're going to organise a one-day event specific to LGBT+ hate crime, where there can be some real positive engagement between the community and the authorities.
That's brilliant, Dan. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. Junaid, from a quick point of view as a service area, what point are you going to take forward from this webinar tonight?
I think the thing that I'll be taking away is looking at how we work with other partners as well, and how we can improve that working relationship as well, because I think for ourselves, it's important that us as partner organisations supporting individuals affected by hate, that we're working as effectively as we possibly can as well. So if an individual is reporting, whether it's to us, whether it's to the police, or whether it's to any of the other partners, it's important that that individual that is reporting gets a really good service from as a result of reporting. So there's a responsibility on us as partners to make sure that we're working as effectively as we possibly can. I think that also as well, just moving forward with relation to ourselves, again, yes, we work very closely with Dan, and we've been able to tap into the various support groups that Dan and Warwickshire Pride kind of host and run as well. But again, it's about continuing that working relationship as well. So I'll certainly look forward to that.
Thank you, Junaid. And Ben from Victim Support, what's one action point that you're going to take forward, please?
I think for us a big part is about making sure we remain visible to the community, whilst we physically can't be visible in the current climate with the virus and different things going on. So we're always really keen to be out in the community doing different talks, different events such as Pride and other events as well. And whilst they can't take place, I feel it's really key for us and other agencies to just make sure that we're still visible to those who do need our support, and they know how to get in touch.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'd like to put that question to Ben Smith at Warwickshire Police, and hopefully he'll come back at some point with a response to that. But it's coming up to 8 o'clock. I think we've gone 1 minute past 8. I'd like to thank all our guests and neighbouring fire and rescue services, Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Royal Berkshire and Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service for making this happen. The team behind the scenes that made it possible, thank you so much. To Sue Scasebrook, Joanna Davis, Elise Gamble and Alison Inslee and the IT team, thank you so much. And on behalf of Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, we wish you a happy Pride. And a final word from me is be proud, be loved and be safe, and good night. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you.